What if you have a rental property in your trust already, but want to put it into an LLC assigned to the trust? So this is a good thing to think about, especially for liability reasons. So what essentially can happen if you have a rental property that's owned directly by your trust. So the trust is on the title to the rental property. If there's ever any sort of dispute at that location, or some kind of a lawsuit or issue or problem arises, if that property is mixed in with all your other property and your assets in your revocable trust, it makes it so that could turn into a problem where anything that is in your trust is essentially open for any type of judgment or claim against the property. So we don't want that to happen. One way to help prevent this is by ensuring you have really good insurance on the property, including an umbrella policy. So that's a good starting point, especially if you have this property already owned by your trust. You want to have really good insurance. You also want to make sure that you very carefully vet who you're renting to. Some rental properties inherently have more liability than others, such as Airbnbs. Those are sort of shorter term rentals. Airbnbs and short term rentals tend to have a little bit more liability associated with them. There's a lot of people going in and out of these properties. So it's super important to make sure you have a good rental application, you interview your renters, that you really make sure that you're vetting the people who you're renting to. That can help us as well for certain types of disputes. Not all maybe, but certain things. But ultimately, yes, it's a good idea to separate rental property or investment property from your personal assets, to make them separate, so you don't have everything just lumped into one pot for liability purposes, meaning you want to limit what somebody who has a dispute could go after. And if you have everything thrown into the same pot, it's all owned by you or all owned by your revocable trust, you're giving them easier access to the entire pot. So yes, owning the property in an LLC would be helpful. It's even more helpful if the LLC, especially for, I'm talking about Florida property here. I'm a Florida attorney. For Florida purposes, it's even better to have two members in the LLC or any, more than one member, because a single member LLC is also a little bit easier to do what we call pierce the corporate veil, go through the actual LLC and try to attach to assets. But for purposes of what we're talking about now, having the property in an LLC, even if it's an LLC that has essentially a single member, your trust, is still going to be better than just having it directly lumped in with all your assets into the trust. So there's an easy process to go about doing this. You would have an attorney prepare what's called a business assignment to trust or membership interest assignment to trust. Now, this is assuming you already have an LLC. So if you have an LLC already that you formed and you're trying to move the property into it, you do that by assigning your membership interest to the trust. If you do not have an LLC that you already formed or set up to be the owner of the property, but you have a trust in place, well, then you can simply form an LLC using the trust as the member. Oftentimes what I'll have my clients do, or will do this for them, is they list the trust as the member, or essentially the owner of the LLC, or if they have two trusts, each individual trust as the owners, and then we have them list themselves as managers of the LLC. That way they can carry out the day-to-day affairs of the company, and also get, they have access to the bank accounts this way, they're signatories. So it's important to have the manager be the trustee of the trust, or you essentially, if you're creating this trust for your rental property. So already existing LLC, you have an attorney prepare a business assignment to trust, putting the membership interest into the trust. Don't have the LLC set up already, but you have your trust, then you form an LLC using the trust as the member, or if there's two trusts, using each trust as a member. Now, the sort of drawback associated with this, and this really depends on when the rental property was purchased. Here in Florida, if you transfer property from yourself or your trust to an LLC, even if you were essentially transferring it from yourself to yourself in the sense that the actual owners really aren't changing, doesn't matter if it's going from an individual to an entity or a trust to an entity would be an LLC. As long as that transfer is occurring, you are going to have a reassessment for property tax purposes. So once you take that out of your revocable trust and put it into an LLC, the property appraiser is going to reassess the property here in Florida, and property taxes on the property could increase depending on when you bought the property. Now, it's unlikely, unless you bought the property many years ago, or it's been in your family for a long time, that the property tax is going to increase to such a degree that you wouldn't want to have it in an LLC. It's going to be way more beneficial to have it in the LLC, especially because a lot of times the property tax might be very nominal. I mean, it could be $500 over the course of a year or even less, right? So it's not going to be some crazy tax increase most of the time. However, you can always call the county property appraiser office and ask them that question. Hey, if I were to transfer my property from my trust to an LLC that I create, are you able to tell me what the tax increase, or estimate what the tax increase would be at reassessment? And they're usually really good about providing you with those numbers. So just to get an idea before you would go ahead and form an LLC with your trust as the member, or move your property into the trust, is probably not a bad idea to check out the property tax increase. Okay, so I hope this helps. If you have more questions like this, or anything to do with estate planning, elder law, probate, please contact our office. We're in Clearwater, Florida, and the link is in my bio. Have a good evening.